Please be seated. This past Thursday, we had a special evensong service to commemorate the feast day when we celebrate Jesus' ascension into heaven. And of course, that's why you see the streamers here, but also because for Ascension, we're up in the rafters, but then next week in Pentecost, the dove will descend and the Holy Spirit will dance over our heads. So dual purpose. But we also had this special evensong to create a showcase for our first two Canon Ron McIntyre scholars. Allison McCallum, who I think is she's around somewhere, run off to be with the children, I think, and Mackenzie Pickett. And they showed off their stuff, singing beautifully and embodying the legacy that they carry. As you may know, Lauren started the program as a way of honoring Ron McIntyre's legacy. And so we started the evening with a piece by Ron himself playing the prelude from a pre-programmed session that he left in the memory. And as they sang, I was moved to tears by both the beauty of the music and that bittersweet advance of time. I was thinking about how much each of them has grown over the 6 and 8 years, respectively, that I've known them. I was also acutely aware of the instruments that were accompanying them, given in honor of my two friends, no longer with us, Ron McIntyre and Paula Pickett. As the notes emerged from their living, fleshy throats of the two choral scholars and harmonized with the chords played on the Steinway piano given in remembrance of Mackenzie's grandmother, I realized that all of us are not only sharing ourselves, but also living the legacy of those who have come and gone before us. This is the life of faith and the pulse of the universe itself. There is such poignant and bittersweet beauty in this endless cycle of nature, of life and death and rebirth. No one knows this better than mothers. They carry life inside themselves, pondering all that will be, rejoicing in the possibilities, and fretting over the dangers. They know that though life is beautiful, it's also fleeting. Those babies grow up so fast. On this Mother's Day, it's important to remember the legacy that our mothers have imprinted upon us. Sometimes the relationship is a source of great joy and the beginning of a resourcing for a life truly well lived. And in other cases, it can be difficult to find much to celebrate at all. While I realize that my mother gave me everything she had and contributed to my positive self-understanding and self-image, I know that for others that's not the case. I am all too aware that some struggle to find much to celebrate at all on Mother's Day. It can be a great day of sorrow as well as a day of great joy, a mingling of feelings. Perhaps this is your first Mother's Day without your mother, or perhaps you are still sitting with the painful memories of a fractured relationship. Mothers are human and necessarily wound us as they shape us. But that's not the case with God. Even when humans do their best, it might not be enough. And so it's important to note that motherhood as we know it here on earth is a reflection of the true motherhood we find in God. Julian of Norwich, a 14th century English mystic and nun, reflected on just this point when she penned a canticle, a poem that we say weekly as part of morning prayer services here at St. Luke's. It's beautiful, so I want to share it with you. It goes like this. God chose to be our mother in all things, and so made the foundation of his work most humble and most pure in the Virgin's womb. God, the perfect wisdom of all, arrayed himself in this humble place. Christ came in our poor flesh to share a mother's care. Our mothers bear us for pain and for death. Our true mother, Jesus, bears us for joy and endless life. Christ carried us within him in love and travail until the full time of his passion. And when all was completed and he carried us so for joy, still all this could not satisfy the power of his wonderful love. All that we owe is redeemed in truly loving God. For the love of Christ works in us. Christ is the one whom we love. I love this poem, for it gets to the very heart of our relationship with God. And it shows us Jesus in a very maternal light. It reminds us that mothering, soul shepherding, is not a masculine or feminine prerogative at all, but rather a divine one. This is quite apparent in today's text from St. John's Gospel. The text is often called by scholars the high priestly prayer, a very dry description of what I think is a very living, vibrant thing. It's a prayer that Jesus offers over his present and future disciples. But this is not accurate to call it a high priestly prayer, since Jesus is not portrayed in a priestly role in John's Gospel whatsoever. The prayer comes closer to functioning as John's version of the Lord's Prayer, or as I'd prefer to call it, a mother's prayer. Jesus knows that his time is soon to come and be fulfilled, and that he's headed out of this world. He will lay down his life for those that he loves, and he wants to intentionally pass on his legacy to them. And so he offers the greatest gift that he can muster, a divine benediction, a prayer, an invocation. And so he uses language that we come to accustomedly associate with God, Father, for this language in this passage. But we must be mindful that this terminology is used to indicate a close and familiar relationship only, and not as an engendered identity. Jesus could have easily also prayed, "And now I am no longer in the world, but they are in the world. And I'm coming to you, Holy Mother, protect them in your name, that you have given me so that they may be one as we are one." Like a true mother, Jesus is asking and seeking protection for his loved ones, yet knowing that they cannot be swaddled forever. And so he prays for their joyful empowerment, that they may be sanctified by God's truth and sent out to continue the work that he has begun. This is what every mother, every living parent knows, and what every living being may discover, that life issues forth from us, but life does not begin in us or with us, nor does it end with us. There is a living legacy, a palpable energy that predates our appearance on the stage, a legacy which we engage sometimes in strife, sometimes in joy throughout our lives. And we know that this legacy will continue long after we're gone. Sometimes on important days, we may even pause to notice it, to acknowledge it, and perhaps to intentionally share it with another. This is what Jesus is doing in today's gospel. Perhaps this is what Mother's Day allows for us, an opportunity to reflect on the legacy handed down to you and how you will hand it on to someone else. I can say with utmost certainty, that's what we did on Thursday when we evoked the legacy of Ron McIntyre and Paula Pickett. The Evensong reminded me of a different parish event. Several years ago, when Shauna Anderson was chairing our George O'Prey Planned Giving Society, which parenthetically has been rather dormant since COVID, so this may be the first time you're hearing about it. Well, she ran this interesting workshop for parishioners and the community to consider their legacy. We invited a woman who worked for hospice to come and teach us how to write legacy letters. This is the practice that encourages individuals to take time to write letters to their loved ones, to be shared upon their departure from the world. It's an invitation to pause in the midst of life and intentionally share a bit of their legacy with those that they love. At the workshop, we were encouraged to make a list of all those we cared for the most, and to pause every year, perhaps when we file our taxes, to write a new legacy letter of love for those to read after we're gone. These we could file with our important estate documents, perhaps also where our will indicates that we're naming St. Luke's as a beneficiary, potentially. But we'd have a true gift to hand on to those that we love. Since that workshop, I would love to tell you that I've been disciplined and made a practice of doing just this. But if I'm being truthful, I can't. It has, however, made me more mindful of life's precious moments and allowed me to notice the presence of legacy passing more widely, like in today's gospel story, or in that childhood classic Charlotte's Web, when Charlotte says to Wilbur, "Your future's assured. You will live secure and safe, Wilbur. Nothing can harm you now." And then, speaking in Charlotte's voice, the author E.B. White shares this profound statement of legacy passing. "The autumn days will shorten and grow cold. The leaves will shake loose from the trees and fall. Christmas will come, then the snows of winter. You will live to enjoy the beauty of the frozen world, for you mean a great deal to Zuckerman, and he will not harm you, ever. Winter will pass, the days will lengthen, the ice will melt in the pasture pond, the song sparrow will return and sing, and the frogs will awake, and the warm wind will blow again. All these sights and sounds and smells will be yours to enjoy, Wilbur, this lovely world, those precious days." This almost seems to mirror the motherly statement that Jesus shares in the gospel today. True transmission of legacy doesn't water down or sugarcoat the nature of life. It both acknowledges the realness of struggle and pain and death, while also calling our attention to the beauty, the joy, and the hope that we experience when we open our eyes and our hearts to the wonder of it all. I recently came across a letter that children's author Kate DiCamillo, who wrote bestsellers The Tale of Despereaux, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and many other titles, had written to another children's author who asked her, "How honest should we, as writers of books for children, be with our readers? Is it our job to tell them the truth, or should we preserve their childhood innocence?" Her response, Kate's response, may be the best example of a legacy letter that I've ever seen. She writes this: "My childhood best friend used to read Charlotte's Web over and over and over again as a kid. She would read the last page, then turn the book over and begin again. A few years ago, I asked her why. 'What was it that made you read and reread that book?' I asked her. 'Did you think if you read it again, things would turn out differently? Better? That Charlotte wouldn't die?' 'No,' she said, 'it wasn't that. I kept reading it not because I wanted it to turn out differently or thought that it would turn out differently, but because I knew for a fact that it wasn't going to turn out differently. I knew that a terrible thing was going to happen. And I also knew that I was going to be okay somehow. I thought that I couldn't bear it, but when I read it again, it was all so beautiful, and I found out that I could bear it. That was what that story told me. That was what I needed to hear, that I could bear it somehow." In her letter, Kate continues, "Several years ago, I was in South Dakota in this massive auditorium talking to 900 kids. And I did what I always do. I told them about being sick all the time as a kid and about my father leaving us. And then I talked to them about wanting to write. And I talked to them about persisting. During the Q&A session, a boy asked if I thought if I would have been a writer if I hadn't been sick all the time and my father hadn't left. And I said something along the lines of, I think there's a very good chance that I wouldn't be standing in front of you here today if those things hadn't happened to me. Later, a girl raised her hand and said, so it turns out that in the end, you were stronger than you thought you were. When the kids left the auditorium, I stood at the door and talked with them as they walked past. One boy, skinny-legged and blonde-haired, grabbed my hand and said, I'm here in South Dakota. My dad is in California. And he flung his free hand out in the direction of California. And he said, he's there, and I'm here with my mom. And I thought I might not be okay. But you said that you're okay, and I think I might be okay too. Kate didn't know what to say except, I think that other kid was right. Turns out in the end, we are stronger than we thought we were. Today's prayer from Jesus pushes us to realize that we are a living legacy, that we might just be stronger than we think we are. With his prayer, he invites us to own that legacy. On this Mother's Day, we all have a legacy to share. We all have the ability to communicate. If you were to take time later today to write a letter, what would it say? To whom would you send it? In honor of our true mother, Jesus, take this Mother's Day to live into that living legacy that he shared with you. May you be a mother to someone else in need today. May you shelter someone with the ferocity of your love. May you empower someone to know that despite life's difficulties, that they're going to be okay. May you make your life a letter of legacy. Amen.